Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, just hope everybody's having a good day. So, in this video, I'm going to be going over the updated prediction, governor's prediction, for the 2026 midterms, how I think that each individual race is going to play out. Now, not a super amount of things have changed, but there's some changes. Different candidates are running now. Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the governor's election. But we're gonna get right into it. You have the safe states, which are gonna be won by either party by over 10 percentage points. Start with safe states for the Democrats. They'll get Hawaii, California, assuming that the primary advances to one Democrat, one Republican. Colorado, New Mexico will now be safe Democratic. Minnesota, with Amy Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar running for governor, that'll be a safe Democratic win, as well as Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. And we will throw in Rhode Island as well. So that'll probably do it with the safe Democratic states. I can see Rhode Island going under 10. It depends. We'll see if their governor gets primaried out. He seems to be really unpopular for some reason. You get those governors every once in a while, kind of like Kim Reynolds in Iowa for the Republicans. There's just some governors that just tend to be very unpopular. That causes them to lose a lot of traction within their state, whether they don't run for election or they simply retire. So, with that being said, those are probably the safe Democratic states. We'll start off with safe Republican states. Will be Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama. Probably will not be competitive at all. South Carolina, Vermont, and I'm assuming that Kelly Ayotte is running for re-election. She'll probably win by over 10. Florida will be safe Republican. That should probably be it. A lot of borderline states, but I'm taking into consideration that it is going to be a Democratic environment, so you will probably see some of these redder states go into likely territory. So those are all of these safe states that both parties should win by over 10. States that won't be competitive at all. It is pretty much goes along with the partisan line. You do have Vermont and New Hampshire electing Republican governors by a lot, but they tend to like Republican governors, despite being blue states. That's just basically how it goes. So what we do with likely Democrat, margin between 5 and 10%. Oregon, that is a pretty reliably blue state, but for some reason, for the governor's level, it tends to be more competitive. Governor's election was within a few points last time, in 2022. Even in 2018, the governor's election was likely Democratic, so it'll be a likely blue margin, probably around 8 or 9. That's just how Oregon typically votes the statewide level candidates. Another likely Democratic state would be Pennsylvania. I also forgot New York. New York's pretty borderline. Before we get into PA, I think New York will probably be safe Democratic, just because Kathy Hochul doesn't really. Bruce Blakeman isn't running a campaign that's putting Kathy Hochul in danger. All right, so back to Pennsylvania. I think it's going to be likely. I wouldn't be surprised if it hits over 10. Josh Shapiro seems to be a pretty strong incumbent governor in Pennsylvania. It is a very purple state, so that's why I'm keeping it as likely out of caution. The Republicans are running Stacey Garrity, who's a strong candidate. I don't think it's going to be enough, especially in with Donald Trump in the White House. It's just less likely to see Pennsylvania really being that competitive. Pennsylvania does typically favor Democratic governors, despite swinging back and forth and being pretty close. It does typically vote for Democrat governors by large margins too. So likely Democratic win for the Democrats. Another is Maine. This will be probably around probably between 6 and 9 points. There's not really a path for the Republicans here. I think the Senate race will be more interesting there. The Republican that they're putting up doesn't really seem to have much name recognition, and I think Democrats will just do well at the top of the ticket. You even saw Paul LePage in 2022 run for governor, because he was a two-term Republican governor before Janet Mills He ran in 2022 and was considered to be a strong candidate since he was already in the office and still got blown out by Janet Mills. So I don't really think Republicans really have much of a shot at the governor's election in Maine. Just doesn't seem likely right now. So those are the likely Democratic states. We'll move on now with likely Republican states. This will be 5 to 10 points. There are quite a few of them. We'll start off with Texas. This will probably be like a 9-point win for Greg Abbott. Doesn't really seem to have much of a problem. I don't think he'll have much of an issue winning re-election in Texas. Just because it is 2026, it'll probably be under 10. But his challenger doesn't seem to be a really high prominent figure or anything. Doesn't seem to have much of a issue. No major scandals for the governor of Texas, so Greg Abbott will probably win by a likely margin. Not much said about Texas. Another state is what do we got here? Alaska. Alaska is definitely gonna be less competitive as it originally was thought to be. There's no prominent Democrats running, though they're running a baggage, so that'll make things interesting. I just think it's the ranked choice voting. I think the Republican will end up winning by a likely margin. At the end of the day, the lieutenant governor there is running, so we'll definitely have to see how that goes up there in Alaska. But I think that's going to be a likely Republican win. How do we get down into lean states where things really get kind of interesting? This is where it really starts getting competitive. We'll start with lean Democratic. Arizona, Katie Hobbs is probably going to win by around 3 points. The election were held today. I think that this would definitely be a Democratic win. I think that Katie Hobbs is probably going to win by around 3 points. Republicans don't really. They had a primary to get through, so you had some candidates drop out, but I think it's still going to be a win for the Democrats there. And then I'll throw in another state. We'll do Wisconsin. This is probably going to be still close, but I think that Tom Tiffany will end up losing probably about a point just because of the environment. I think it'll pull him out. I think that just because of that, I think that just because the environment, it'll go Democratic. I just think that you even saw a close election in 2018, so I still think it's going to be competitive. If Republicans have like a neutral night, I could see Tiffany winning, especially if Democrats nominate Mandela Burns. He isn't that strong of a candidate, but I still think he'll be able to get the job done for the Dems, just because of the national environment. And then we will move on to lean Republican elections. I'd say Nevada, they have an incumbent Republican governor, Joe Lombardo. He seems to be pretty popular and doesn't really have much scandals at all, so I think that he shouldn't have much of a problem. He is running against the Attorney General, Aaron Ford, who is a prominent Democrat in the state. I just think that he's going up against an incumbent. I just don't really think it's going to pan out for him. He will make this close. I still think it's probably going to be around 2 points for Lombardo. If there's the Democrat in the White House, this would probably be likely Republican, to say Republican. But since there's a Republican administration, I think Democrats will do fairly well in 2026. I think Lombardo will only win by around 2 points. Lean Republican, I'd say Kansas. Kansas is hard to tell which way it's going to go margin-wise because it is a pretty red state, but statewide level it tends to be kind of competitive. They don't really have a bench. I think Scott Schwab is probably going to be the nominee. He's pretty strong. Republican, he's their state treasurer or auditor. I forget. I think he's their treasurer. He'll probably win by around 4 points. I definitely could see it go into likely territory, which probably will happen. But just out of caution, I'm keeping it as lean Republican. Because that's kind of how Kansas is like the opposite of some of these other states. It just tends to be more competitive at that level, kind of like Oregon, but reversed. Another lean Republican state is Iowa. I just see that as definitely a race that is considered competitive because Democrats are running Rob Sand, the only statewide elected Democrat. He is the auditor. I don't know if it's going to completely work. I think Republicans will be able to spend some money on this race and be able to win probably by around 2 or 3 points. There is, despite being a strong candidate on the Democrat side, I think Randy Feenstra should be able to win this election by a few points. I think this will be a win for the Republicans. It definitely could narrow up, though. We'll have to see. Another lean Republican state is Ohio. Ohio, I really do see this race not as close as I thought it was going to be earlier in the cycle. Thing with Ohio is that polling usually shows um, Democrats tied or slightly leading in the beginning, or Republicans slightly leading, and then it ends up being dominant Republican win in the end. That's probably how it's going to be for Ohio. I still think it's going to be on the closer side, like probably about 4 points for Vivek Ramaswamy. But I think he's cleaned up his campaign. Not to say he's a strong candidate, but I think that he's running a stronger campaign than a lot of people anticipated. And Ohio just isn't the same as it was before, because you even saw Sherrod Brown lose in 2024, which is kind of like the last uh, hurrah for the Democrats in Ohio from in 2018. With him gone, it's definitely going to be an uphill climb for Amy Acton. So it'll probably be a lean Republican win for the Buckeye State. Now we will be going to this tilt states. We have two of them. Right now we have Michigan. I'm still leaving this as tilt Democratic. I still think Jocelyn Benson's gonna pull it out for the Democrats. It's gonna be extremely close. Definitely by a tilt margin. I definitely can see John James winning. It really depends on how much vote Detroit's Mayor Mike Duggan takes from Benson. Because if he ends up taking a lot of Democrat vote, then John James will probably win. Because chances are, the independent isn't going to take as much from the Republicans, because he still does lean to the left mostly. He is definitely independent. So he will take votes away from the Republicans, but it just depends on how much he takes from the Democrats. I just think that Benson will definitely just have enough votes to win, probably because of the national environment. But it's going to be a very close election, and I definitely think that James can win. But I still think that you'll see the Democrat win in the state of Michigan. So with that being said, we'll move on to So in the case of Georgia, it's going to be tilt Republican. You're probably it's still gonna be a pretty hard primary to get through for the Republicans. Same with the Democrats, but the problem for the Democrats is they're not running any high profile Democrats. They don't really have as much of a bench here. They do at the U.S. Senate level with John Ossoff, but at the governor's level, they don't really have that. Georgia still typically elects Republicans statewide. I think they haven't had a Democrat governor since the 1980s. So because of that, I think that Republican Governor Brian Kemp, right now will be succeeded by another Republican. Now, it's hard to say who. I think it's going to be close. Democrats could definitely flip it if the stars align. But I still think it's going to be a tilt Republican race for the reasons I just stated. So, hope that you enjoyed the video. Please give this video a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you like unbiased election content. Hope you have a good day. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.